kids, where are you? It's time for all the art to tell stories.
Once upon a time, in a peaceful village, there lived a kind and beautiful young girl named Aschenputtel. She lived with her father, who was a wealthy merchant, her stepmother, and her two stepsisters. Aschenputtel's mother had passed away when she was very young. Her father remarried, hoping to provide Aschenputtel with a loving family. But the new wife and her daughters were cruel and selfish. The stepmother and stepsisters were envious of Aschenputtel's beauty and gentle nature. They treated her as a servant, forcing her to perform the hardest chores. Despite her hardships, Aschenputtel remained kind-hearted and never complained. She found solace in the birds and animals that lived near the house, befriending them and sharing her thoughts with them. She often visited her mother's grave, where she would cry and pray for strength and guidance. One day, the king of the land announced that a grand festival would be held at the palace, lasting 3 days. The purpose of the festival was to find a bride for the prince. All the young women in the kingdom were invited to attend. The stepsisters were thrilled at the prospect. Aschenputtel, too, hoped to go to the festival. But her stepmother sneered at the idea. "You attend the festival?" The stepmother scoffed. "Look at you. You have no fine clothes, no jewelry, and no proper manners. Stay here and clean the house instead." Aschenputtel pleaded, but her stepmother gave her an impossible task. She had to sort an entire bowl of lentils and ashes into separate piles before she could consider attending. Heartbroken, Aschenputtel sat by the fireplace, tears streaming down her face. Her bird friends saw her distress and flew down to help. With their tiny beaks, they quickly sorted the lentils from the ashes. But when Aschenputtel showed her stepmother the completed task, the woman only laughed and gave her another, even larger, bowl to sort. Again the birds came to her aid and finished the task, but her stepmother still refused to let her go. Aschenputtel, devastated, ran to her mother's grave and cried beneath the hazel tree that grew there. "Mother," she sobbed, "please help me. I wish to go to the festival." As she wept, a gentle breeze rustled the branches of the hazel tree, and a white bird descended with a shimmering gown of gold and silver, along with delicate silk shoes. Filled with gratitude, Aschenputtel put on the gown and shoes and felt transformed. The bird also warned her, "You must leave the palace before the clock strikes midnight, for the magic will fade." Aschenputtel hurried to the palace, where her beauty and grace captivated everyone. The prince himself noticed her immediately and asked her to dance. They danced the entire evening, and Aschenputtel's joy was unparalleled. When the clock struck midnight, she remembered the bird's warning and fled the palace, leaving the prince puzzled and longing to know who she was. In her haste, she disappeared into the night. The following evening, Aschenputtel returned to her mother's grave, and the bird provided her with an even more exquisite gown and shoes. Once again she attended the festival, and the prince could not take his eyes off her. They danced all night. As midnight approached, Aschenputtel slipped away, vanishing into the darkness before he could stop her. On the third and final night of the festival, the bird gifted Aschenputtel a gown more magnificent than ever, adorned with jewels that sparkled like stars. When she arrived at the palace, the prince was overjoyed to see her and resolved not to let her escape this time. As they danced, he devised a plan to uncover her identity. He had the palace stairs coated with pitch, hoping to catch her by her shoes if she tried to run. As midnight struck, Aschenputtel fled once more, but one of her golden shoes stuck to the pitch. She escaped with only one shoe, and the prince, determined to find her, declared that he would marry the woman whose foot fit the golden shoe. The next morning, the prince began his search, visiting every house in the kingdom. The stepsisters were eager to try on the shoe, certain that one of them would win the prince's hand. The first stepsister forced her foot into the shoe, but it was too small. Hoping to deceive the prince, she cut off her toes, and the prince almost believed her until a pair of doves cried out, "Look back! Look back! There's blood in the track. The shoe is too tight. The maiden's not right." Seeing the blood, the prince knew she was not the one. The second stepsister tried next, but the shoe was too narrow. She cut off her heel, but again the doves warned the prince, "Look back! Look back! There's blood in the track. The shoe is too tight. The maiden's not right." Finally, the prince asked if there were any other young women. The stepmother scoffed. "Only a dirty servant girl, but she's not worthy of your time." The prince insisted, and Aschenputtel was summoned. She appeared shy and hesitant, but when she tried on the shoe, it fit perfectly. The prince recognized her immediately. The prince declared her his bride. Aschenputtel's stepsisters begged for her forgiveness and sought to gain her favor, hoping to share in her good fortune. But as Aschenputtel and the prince rode to the palace, the doves pecked out the eyes of the deceitful stepsisters. Aschenputtel married the prince and lived happily ever after. She never forgot her mother's advice to remain kind and patient, and her goodness brought her the happiness and love she deserved. The hazel tree at her mother's grave continued to bloom, a reminder of love and guidance. Once upon a time, there was a poor fisherman who lived with his wife in a small, dilapidated hut by the sea. The fisherman spent his days casting his net into the ocean, hoping to catch enough fish to feed them. Though their lives were simple and their possessions few, the fisherman was content with his life. However, his wife often lamented their poverty and longed for a better existence. One day, as the fisherman cast his net into the sea, he felt a strong tug. Pulling with all his might, he reeled in a large glistening fish. To his astonishment, the fish spoke. "Please, kind fisherman, let me go," said the fish. "I am no ordinary fish. I am an enchanted prince. If you spare my life, I will grant you any wish you desire." The fisherman, though amazed, was a humble man and did not believe in exploiting the fish's offer. "You are a marvelous creature," he said, "and I cannot bring myself to harm you. Go freely, and may you live in peace." The fish flipped its tail in gratitude and disappeared into the waves. The fisherman returned to his hut and told his wife what had happened. She was furious. "You caught an enchanted fish and let it go without asking for anything," she exclaimed. "How foolish! We live in squalor, and you had the chance to change our fortune. Go back and call to the fish. Tell it we wish for a cozy cottage to replace this miserable hut." Reluctantly, The fisherman returned to the sea. Standing at the water's edge, he called out, "O enchanted fish of the sea, hear my call, I beg of thee. My wife has a wish, as you will see." The sea shimmered, and the fish surfaced. "What does your wife desire?" it asked. "She wishes for a cozy cottage," the fisherman replied. "Go home," said the fish. "It is done." When the fisherman returned, he found their hut transformed into a lovely little cottage with a thatched roof, flower boxes under the windows, and a small garden brimming with vegetables and flowers. His wife was overjoyed, but her happiness was short-lived. A week passed, and the wife grew restless. "This cottage is too small," she said. "We deserve something grander. Go back to the fish and ask for a stone castle." The fisherman hesitated. "Why can we not be content with what we have?" he asked. "Because we deserve more," she replied. "Go now." Reluctantly, the fisherman returned to the sea and called to the fish, "O enchanted fish of the sea, hear my call, I beg of thee. My wife has another wish for me." The fish surfaced, its golden scales glinting in the sunlight. "What does she desire now?" it asked. "She wishes for a stone castle," the fisherman said. "Go home," said the fish. "It is done." The fishermen returned to find their cottage replaced by a grand stone castle with tall towers, vast halls, and opulent furnishings. Servants attended to their every need, and his wife was thrilled for a time. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, her satisfaction waned. "This castle is splendid," she said, "but I tire of it already. I wish to be queen over all the land. Go to the fish and tell it my new desire." The fisherman was appalled. "A queen? That is far too much to ask." "Nonsense," she said. "The fish has granted our wishes before. It will grant this one too." With a heavy heart, the fisherman returned to the sea and called out, "O enchanted fish of the sea, hear my call, I beg of thee. My wife has another wish for me." The fish surfaced, and its expression seemed wearier than before. "What does she desire now?" "She wishes to be queen over all the land," the fisherman said. "Go home," said the fish. "It is done." When the fisherman returned, he found his wife dressed in royal robes, sitting on a golden throne in a grand palace. She ruled over the land, commanding armies and collecting tributes. For a while she was satisfied, but soon her ambition grew insatiable. "I have all the land," she said, "but I wish to rule the sun, moon, and stars. Go to the fish and tell it I wish to be empress of the universe." The fisherman was aghast. "This is madness. The fish cannot grant such a wish." "It will," she insisted. "Go now." The fisherman trudged to the sea, his heart heavy with dread. The sky had darkened, and the waves churned angrily as he called out, "O enchanted fish of the sea, hear my call, I beg of thee. My wife has a final wish for me." The fish surfaced, its golden scales dull and its voice grim. "What does she desire now?" "She wishes to rule the sun, moon, and stars," the fisherman said, his voice trembling. The fish stared at him for a long moment before saying, "Go home. She is back in her old hut." When the fisherman returned, he found their grand palace gone. In its place was the same small, dilapidated hut where they had begun. His wife sat inside, weeping bitterly. From that day on, the fisherman and his wife lived humbly in their little hut. Though she often lamented their lost grandeur, the fisherman found solace in the simple life he had always cherished. And though the sea continued to shimmer with its endless mysteries, he never called out to the enchanted fish again. Once upon a time, there was a clever little tailor who had a knack for turning everyday challenges into grand adventures. One sunny morning, after swatting 7 pesky flies with a single blow, he crafted himself a proud belt stitched with the words, "7 at 1 blow." Adorned with this grand title, the tailor felt ready to seek his fortune in the wide world. The tailor's journey led him into a dense forest, where towering trees cast long shadows on the ground. As he walked, he came across a gigantic figure lounging beneath an ancient oak. The giant, with his bulging muscles and fearsome visage, seemed like an insurmountable foe. But the tailor, emboldened by his belt and his clever mind, approached confidently. "Greetings, friend," the tailor called out. "I see you are strong, but I have bested 7 at 1 blow." The giant, intrigued and skeptical, laughed heartily. "You, a mere speck of a man, claim to have such strength. Prove it." The tailor, ever resourceful, noticed a large boulder nearby. "Let us see who can squeeze water from this stone," he suggested. The giant, smirking, picked up the boulder and strained with all his might. His massive hands crushed the stone, but no water emerged. The tailor, meanwhile, reached into his pouch and retrieved a piece of cheese he had carried. Holding it up, he squeezed until whey dripped from it. "Behold!" the tailor exclaimed. The giant, impressed by what he believed to be extraordinary strength, accepted the tailor as his equal and invited him to travel together. As they continued their journey, the giant decided to test the tailor further. Pointing to a tall tree, the giant said, "Let us see who can carry this tree the farthest." The tailor, realizing he could not match the giant's physical strength, devised a plan. "You take the trunk," he said, "and I will carry the branches." The giant hoisted the heavy trunk onto his shoulders, while the tailor merely held on to the branches, allowing the giant to bear the full weight. As they walked, the tailor chatted cheerfully, pretending the task was effortless. The giant was astonished at the tailor's apparent stamina. News of the tailor's feats spread quickly, and it wasn't long before he arrived at the gates of a grand palace. The king, having heard of this extraordinary man, who claimed to have slain 7 at 1 blow, decided to test the tailor's mettle. The kingdom was plagued by 2 ferocious giants who terrorized the land, and the king promised the tailor great riches and his daughter's hand in marriage if he could defeat them. The tailor, undaunted, accepted the challenge. He found the giants in a rocky valley, their booming voices echoing off the cliffs. Instead of confronting them directly, the tailor climbed a tree and waited until nightfall. As the giants settled down to rest, he threw stones at them, ensuring each stone hit one giant and then the other. Confused and enraged, the giants accused each other of the attacks. Their argument escalated into a violent brawl, and by dawn, both lay defeated by their own hands. the tailor returned to the palace claiming victory. The king, reluctant to honor his promise, gave the tailor another task: to capture a wild boar that had been wreaking havoc in the royal forest. The tailor, though wary of the dangerous beast, set out with his usual ingenuity. He found the boar near a thicket and lured it into a trap by scattering breadcrumbs leading to an abandoned barn. Once the boar was inside, the tailor quickly shut the doors, trapping the creature. He then returned to the palace to report his success. Still unwilling to fulfill his promise, the king devised yet another challenge. This time, the tailor was to retrieve a magical jewel guarded by a fierce lion in a distant cave. The tailor, undeterred, set off once more. Upon reaching the cave, he observed the lion pacing outside. Using his sewing skills, the tailor crafted a makeshift net from vines and waited until the lion fell asleep. Silently, he draped the net over the lion and secured it tightly. With the beast incapacitated, the tailor entered the cave and retrieved the jewel. Having completed all the king's challenges, the tailor returned triumphantly. The king, impressed and out of excuses, reluctantly fulfilled his promise. The tailor married the princess and was granted half the kingdom. Though he was now a ruler, the tailor never forgot his humble beginnings. His cleverness and courage had earned him a place among the great, proving that wit and determination could triumph over brute strength. And so, the brave little tailor lived happily ever after, his belt a constant reminder of his incredible journey, and the 7 he had conquered at one blow. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom surrounded by mountains and forests, there lived a young prince. He was known throughout the land for his wisdom and wit, but also for his curiosity. This prince often ventured beyond the castle walls, disguised as a common traveler, to learn about the lives of his subjects and the mysteries of the world. One day, the prince decided to leave the comforts of his palace and embark on a journey with no fixed destination. He wished to explore lands unknown and gather knowledge that no book could provide. Dressing in simple attire and carrying a modest satchel, he set out on his horse. His only companions were his quick mind and his insatiable curiosity. As the prince traveled through a dense forest, he was ambushed by a group of bandits. These were no ordinary thieves. They were cunning and ruthless. They demanded his gold and threatened to take his life. The prince, thinking quickly, proposed a challenge. "If I can present you with a riddle you cannot solve," the prince said, "you must let me go free. But if you answer it, I will willingly give you my gold and my horse." The bandits, intrigued by the prince's audacity, agreed to the terms. The prince then posed his riddle. "I am not alive, yet I grow. I do not have lungs, yet I need air. I do not have a mouth, yet I can drown. What am I?" The bandits scratched their heads and debated among themselves, but none could solve the riddle. Finally, they admitted defeat, and the prince revealed the answer: fire. True to their word, the bandits let the prince go. Impressed by his cleverness, they even offered him a warning. "Beware of the king in the neighboring land. He is as clever as you, but far more dangerous." Curious about the warning, the prince decided to visit this neighboring kingdom. Upon arrival, he found it to be a land of remarkable beauty, with golden fields and towering castles. However, the people seemed wary and subdued. They whispered of their king, a man known for his love of riddles and his ruthless enforcement of his rule. The king had a peculiar law. Any visitor who wished to stay in the kingdom had to solve 3 riddles. If they failed, they would lose their heads. Despite the risk, the prince's curiosity got the better of him, and he presented himself at the royal court. The king, a man with piercing eyes and a sly smile, welcomed the prince. "I hear you are a man of riddles," the king said. "If you can solve my 3 riddles, you may not only stay, but also have a reward of your choosing. Fail, and you know the consequences." The prince accepted the challenge. The court fell silent as the king presented the first riddle. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. What am I?" The prince thought for a moment and then answered, "An echo." The king nodded, impressed. He then posed the second riddle. "I am always hungry. I must always be fed. The finger I touch will soon turn red. What am I?" The prince smiled and replied, "Fire." The king's expression grew serious. For the third and final riddle, he leaned forward and said, "The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I?" The prince pondered this for a while before answering, "Footsteps." The court erupted in murmurs, and the king, though visibly displeased, acknowledged the prince's victory. "You are indeed clever," the king admitted. "As promised, you may choose a reward." Among the rewards offered was the hand of the king's daughter, a princess renowned for her beauty and intellect. The prince, intrigued, chose to meet her. The princess was as clever as her father, and had grown weary of the riddles and games that defined her life. When she met the prince, she saw not just his charm, but also his intelligence, and she felt a spark of hope. The king, noticing their mutual admiration, set one final challenge. "If you wish to marry my daughter," he said, "you must solve a riddle of her choosing. Fail, and you must leave this kingdom forever." The princess stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Here is my riddle," she said. "I have cities, but no houses. I have mountains, but no trees. I have water, but no fish. What am I?" The prince thought carefully. After a moment, he smiled and answered, "A map." The princess clapped her hands in delight. "You are truly my equal," she said. The king, though reluctant, gave his blessing for the marriage. The prince and princess were wed in a grand ceremony, and their union brought a new spirit of fairness and wisdom to the kingdom. Together, they ruled with compassion, ensuring that riddles became a source of joy and learning rather than fear and oppression. The prince's journey had taught him much, but perhaps the greatest lesson was that wit and kindness, when combined, could overcome even the most formidable challenges. And so, the prince and princess lived happily ever after, their reign celebrated in tales of wisdom and love for generations to come. Once upon a time, in a quaint little village surrounded by dense forests and golden fields, there lived 3 unlikely companions: a piece of straw, a lump of coal, and a bean. Though each came from humble beginnings, fate brought them together under extraordinary circumstances, forging a bond that would lead them on a remarkable adventure. The story began in the hearth of an old farmhouse. The farmer's wife, known for her bustling kitchen, had lit the fire to prepare a hearty stew. Straw had been plucked from the barn to kindle the flames, coal lay glowing in the embers, and bean had been taken from the pantry, destined to join the bubbling pot. But as luck would have it, a small mishap occurred. The farmer's wife was called away, and in her absence, a playful gust of wind swept through the kitchen, scattering the trio across the floor. For a moment, they lay in silence, each pondering their narrow escape. Then Straw spoke up, his thin, reedy voice trembling with excitement. "What a stroke of fortune! We have been spared from our fates. Let us seize this chance to explore the world beyond this kitchen." Cole, his voice deep and rumbling, chuckled. "I agree. I was destined to burn to ash, but now I feel as if I've been reignited with purpose. What say you, Bean?" Bean, who had been rolling slowly across the floor to join them, nodded vigorously. "Let us escape together. The world must be vast and full of wonders." And so, the trio made their way out of the farmhouse. They rolled, bounced, and tumbled over the threshold and into the great wide world. Their journey began on a sunlit path that wound through fields of ripening crops and led to the edge of the forest. The 3 friends marveled at the beauty around them. Birds singing in the trees, butterflies flitting through the air, and the scent of wildflowers carried on the breeze. As they ventured deeper into the forest, they encountered their first challenge. A babbling brook lay in their path, its waters clear and swift. Straw, always eager to help, stretched himself across the stream to form a bridge. "Climb on to me," Straw said. "I will carry you safely across." Cole, his fiery nature tempered by gratitude, went first. "Thank you, Straw," he said as he rolled carefully across. But as Cole reached the middle of the bridge, the heat of his body began to scorch Straw's delicate fibers. "Be quick, Bean," cried Straw, his voice quivering with strain. Bean, sensing the urgency, hurried onto the bridge. But just as he reached the midpoint, Straw could bear the heat no longer. With a loud snap, he broke in 2, sending all 3 tumbling into the water below. The cool water extinguished Cole's glow, and he drifted to the shore, smudged and dark, but otherwise unharmed. Straw floated downstream, his once sturdy form now soggy and weak. Bean, however, had the most peculiar reaction. As he splashed into the water, his thin skin split open with a sharp crack, exposing his soft, pale interior. Bean was mortified. "Oh, look at me," he wailed. "I've been ruined." But just then, a kindly old tailor happened to be walking by. Seeing the sorry state of the 3 companions, he took pity on them. With his nimble fingers, he plucked Bean from the water and sewed him back together using fine black thread. "There now," said the tailor with a smile. "Good as new, though you'll always bear the mark of this adventure." Bean looked down at the black seam running along his side and sighed. "Thank you, kind sir. I suppose this scar will remind me of the dangers we've faced." The tailor then turned to coal and straw, helping them dry off and regain their composure. Though shaken by their ordeal, the trio thanked the tailor and continued on their way. Their journey took them through dense thickets, over rolling hills, and into bustling villages. Along the way, they encountered many curious creatures. A family of field mice who shared tales of hidden treasures. A flock of sparrows who warned of a fierce fox lurking nearby. And even a wise old owl who advised them to seek the safety of companionship. Despite their differences, the three friends grew closer with each passing day. Straw's ingenuity often saved them from peril. Coal's warmth provided comfort during cold nights. And Bean's resilience inspired them to keep going even when the road seemed too difficult. One day, they arrived at the edge of a vast canyon. The only way across was a rickety rope bridge swaying precariously in the wind. "This is it," said Straw, peering nervously at the chasm below. "Our greatest challenge yet." Coal, ever bold, stepped forward. "We've come too far to turn back now. Together we can overcome anything." Bean nodded, his tiny black seam gleaming in the sunlight. "Let's do this, one step at a time." With great care, they made their way across the bridge, supporting one another with words of encouragement and steady movements. The journey was treacherous, but their unwavering friendship carried them through. When they finally reached the other side, they collapsed in relief and laughter, marveling at their own courage. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, the trio realized how far they had come. They had started as mere kitchen scraps, destined for obscurity, yet their adventure had transformed them into something extraordinary. From that day forward, Straw, Coal, and Bean became legends in their own right. Travelers spoke of the three friends who braved every obstacle with courage and unity. And though their journey eventually came to an end, their story lived on, a testament to the power of friendship and the magic of embracing life's unexpected turns. If you like our stories, please like, subscribe, and turn on the little bell so you won't miss exciting stories every day. You are also welcome to share it with family and friends to listen to the story together. Love you.